Welcome, you guys, to a super special edition of the Best Damn Coach podcast. I am here with a whole bunch of my friends, and we are recording our 300th episode together, and we're doing it live party status. So you can't see them, but I'm giving them a round of applause. You guys can all clap. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see all of their faces. And you guys, my mom's here, which is super fun. Hi, mom. And some of my friends, some of my clients that I've had for years or are brand new, some listeners. And so you all make me happy. And one of the things I said is that sometimes in this like entrepreneurship space, in this online world, we hit these milestones. And if you're like me, I don't always pause to stop to celebrate. I'm just like, let's go to the next thing. Great. You hit 300 episodes. Great. Let's get to 400. And so as this was approaching, I was talking to my team. I was thinking to myself, I was like, no, I want to do something special and unique. And I even went to my BDC members. I think it was shout out to Monica, who's on the call, that was like, bring your people in. And I was like, you're right. I want to bring the people in that I record this for and that I've had the opportunity to watch grow over the years. So I'm honored to have all of you. And those of you that are listening live right now, I'm so excited that you are tuning in because we have some fun stuff happening today inside the live episode. And so I want to go back to the beginning, though, and tell the story, if you haven't heard it, about why I started a podcast. Because I think for many of you running coaching businesses, you too might have like this little bug in your ears sometimes. It's like, maybe I should start a podcast, right? Would that be for me? And I was working with a coach, pretty much my first coach ever. And I was really struggling with blogging. I had met somebody that was in the personal finance space and he like swore by blogging. He was a great friend. And so I was really forcing like square peg into a round hole of trying to blog. I I don't do well writing. I mean, I write well, but you can ask my team or my like lifelong editor, my mom. Uh, I'm really bad at grammar. If you guys have been in my Instagram stories, you probably noticed some spelling mistakes. It's because like I think so high level sometimes and I don't slow down for those details. And I was really looking for another way to reach my people. And so I remember I was in a coaching session. My coach was walking me through a visualization, and she like had me just envision my ideal client and like really bring to mind a picture of her. And I remember I thought she was like loony. She's like, I want you to walk up to her and I want you to whisper in her ear and ask her the question, how did you find me? So I'm in my mind's eye, like visualizing this whole process. And immediately the response I had was, I heard you. I was like, she heard me. What does that mean? Come on now. And for me, my interpretation was, oh, like the way I'm going to make the greatest impact is through my voice. I'm more powerful using my voice and articulating and teaching off the cuff than I am trying to fit my words into a box, into a blog and type that way. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And so it was like, full steam ahead, I'm going to start a podcast. And like many things in business, I had no idea what I was doing. And so for me, this is extra special today, not because I'm going to make this about podcasting in general, the topic I'm going to share today, which is a super secret topic. Haven't told anybody what we're going to actually talk about today, but I know it's going to resonate. For me, this isn't about the podcast specifically. It's about being willing to start when you know nothing and be a beginner and learn as you go and try and fail and restart potentially, which is a skill set I think that we all need, whether we're running a business, whether we're parenting, whether we're anything in life. These are just very, very valuable components. So type a one in the chat box if you can resonate with any of that. I'm going to be talking to my people as I'm recording here as well. So lots of ones coming through the chat box for sure. The cool thing about podcasting that is different, if you never really thought about this, is there's some superpowers about podcasting that I really love. It's the only place that you could actually get 100% of subscribers or your audience to listen. Have you ever thought about that? Like social media, about 3 to 5% will see your content, but for every subscriber in a podcast, you get that reminder every single week to listen, and it is no fail delivery. And so for me, that's a silent superpower. And if you're not a subscriber of the podcast, or whatever platform you're listening to, I would totally encourage you to do that. That way you don't miss good episodes from my podcast or other podcasts that you love. But this is a really, really valuable piece. And so it gives me 100% opportunity, and people are choosing to listen, right? So that means they have to like your content. They like you to keep coming back. And so just some things I want to share about podcasting, some really interesting stats. Are you ready for these stats? So I've recorded 300 episodes. I've learned a lot. But for those of you that are podcast produce, like you have ever listened to a podcast, or you obviously, most of you have, or you've been a part of a podcast production yourself, there's so much work that goes into listenership. So here's some statistics. If you have more than 30 downloads in a 7-day period after you publish an episode, you're already better than half the podcasts that exist. So only 50% of podcasts will even get 50 or 30 downloads after within a 7-day time frame. That kind of blows my mind, right? Isn't that so interesting? When you start to think of that, automatically 30 days, 1 week in with 30 downloads, you're better than half of people that are out there. If you keep going, 470 downloads puts you in the top 10%. 1,100 downloads puts you in the top 5, and 4,800 downloads puts you in the top 1%. So I'm excited to say we're in the top 2%, which means we get consistent downloads. Do those wax and wane? Yes. We've seen the rise and fall of the podcast as we, downloads and re-rise again as we switched niches and rebranded and all those things. But when I look back at that, what I was like thinking, what am I going to talk about on this episode that's really going to make sense? And I picked like the most sexy topic ever, which is consistency. Today, I want to speak to consistency because I think that it is the one thing we all strive for, and yet the single most common struggle that I see everyone with, no matter if we're talking health and fitness, no matter if we're talking business building, parenting, all of those things really dial down to consistency. And so I think you guys might relate to this. And that is like some of the thoughts that happen is like, I always seem to start off strong and then I kind of fall away, or I really lack follow through. I start something and then I never seem to finish it, or I struggle with self-doubt and that takes me away from consistency, or all my insecurities from the past kind of drudge up when it comes time to take action. And so I want to share today really my 3 things that I feel like I've done to maintain consistency in my business. Because as I was talking with Justin, I asked him, like, what's my superpower, do you think? He's like, you're disciplined and consistent. Like when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And I feel like that's true in my personal life equally as it is my business. But I'm going to help give today three tips to help you be consistent. So those of you that are live, feel free to take notes, ask questions, follow up when we get to it. But I'm going to also ask you 3 questions to help you maintain, or I would say realign with consistency inside of your business as well. So number 1 thing I did is I set a standard for myself. I basically decided if I'm going to do this podcast thing, I'm going to do it consistently. Like I am committed to putting out a weekly episode, because here's what I know about podcasting is if I don't show up, then that also teaches my listeners that I'm not showing up consistently. So if they're looking to get an episode from me every single week and I'm gone, then that gives them an opportunity to go find a different podcast, or honestly, just to forget about my podcast. Because how many times have you listened to a podcast and not subscribed, and then you forgot that you ever listened, right? So it's another superpower of podcasting, specifically equally to a newsletter, I would say, is that it gives you the opportunity to be super consistent and show up for your people every single week. So when I set a standard for myself, I really have like strong guardrails that help me honor that commitment to myself. And that's just that internal self-talk that says, I said I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to follow through. Am I perfect? No, of course not. But there are certain elements. So there's definitely times where the podcast was pretty crappy, but I was like, I said I was going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And then there's times, especially now, where we have a team more in place and I'm able to have more freedom, that I feel like the episode quality and the intention and things are more into it, which I'll talk about next. But I set a standard and I want to model what I teach. I don't feel like I can, with integrity, sit in front of my clients, all of you guys, my audience, and say, be consistent, and then have an episode, wait 3 weeks, not have an episode, etc. And so that has been really just a strong compass for me. On the strategy side, something I remind my students of all the time is I am such a fan of outcome blocking. And this is different than time blocking, because what it does is it sets a specific intention for completion. And so what I did was I set a specific time and day that every week, excuse me, I was going to podcast. And then not only did I say every Tuesday I'm going to podcast, I said specifically in my planner, I know exactly what episode number I'm going to record or what show notes I'm going to record. I think this is a gift that many people don't give themselves is they don't carve out this space proactively to say like, okay, I have this 4-hour block on Tuesday to work in my business. What am I going to do? Instead, they roll up at that 4 hours and are trying to make decisions and they haven't got that clarity. So my people and my communities know I keep encouraging block the outcome you want to achieve. So by the end of the hour, you know, you will have recorded episode 3, you will have wrote 7 social media posts, or you will have mapped out your webinar. Whatever it is, outcome blocking is for me a pivotal, skill set that I've worked to hone in on consistently. So with that, I'm going to just throw that to you. And you guys that are here live can totally, answer this in the chat box or just hold on to it. For those of you listening is, what does this look like for you? Where are you not necessarily honoring a commitment you've made to yourself consistently? And what's your opportunity? So I'll say that again. Where are you not honoring a commitment to yourself? And how can you shift that? Because I do think there's this element of pride and confidence, right? Action begets action. And as we get into the other two, I'm going to help you kind of figure out how you can honor those commitments a little bit more. Cool. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you got to start somewhere with any action you want to be consistent on. And this is where that perfectionism definitely tends to creep in. So if you're here with me live, you can type a 1 in the chat box if you tend to be that perfection paralysis. I want it to look just so good and so perfect, like all the people that have been doing it for 10 years before me. And it needs to be like that out of the gate. I think this is a huge opportunity. There's a lot of 1s if you can't see that live in the chat box, but I started with no real structure. I didn't hire a podcast coach. I didn't ask really anybody what to do. I was just kind of like, okay, what do I want this to look like? And for the first year and change, I was recording my podcast on my phone through the horrible wired headphones that you plug into your ears. And then I would record in the voice recorder. And that's it. And that's a free app on my phone. And I really had no clue what I was doing. And oftentimes it sounded probably like really forced, but the idea was that I didn't buy a mic even in the first 6 months to a year. And then once I realized and created a cadence of consistency, then I was like, all right, I'm ready to bring somebody on to help me. I noticed like there's no way I could do the tech and editing piece. That wasn't a skill set I personally wanted to learn. So immediately out the gate, I definitely brought in somebody to leverage that component of it. And that was honestly one of the best decisions I made was to get the support around what I was doing. And so for me, being able to just start where you can start is such an important, memory piece, tool in the toolbox to keep going. And then once we, had systems, that's when amazing Tina came on. I was already podcasting then. We built systems around it. We started streamlining. We started organizing things to her. It got better. We started looking at optimizing and SEO. We started asking our questions like, hey, this podcast thing's working. How do we get more listenership to it? And there's definitely moments where I'm not ready to hit record and I record, but this also translates to other things that we do in our business, that willingness to be imperfect, to be perfect. Right before this call, I was teaching to our FBL Live students, and one of my community members said something that was so powerful. And she's like, I just heard this, Amanda, is like beta, like first beta, then better. And I love that in so many ways. As coaches, it's like get your first beta client and then get better at coaching, right? Get your first beta episode underway, then get better. But so many of us want to rush into perfection, and we're kind of just missing the mark because we're stabbing at perfection with really no baseline. Like, what is perfection? What are my people going to listen to? I'm actually not going to even know that until I put out lots of episodes. And now, through the help of our podcast manager, who's not here today, Eloisa, right now, we sat down as a team, like last month too, and I just asked, like, can you look at the last year now and just tell me, where are my people showing up the most? What episodes are the most popular? And the data shows me they download my episodes, my solo episodes the most. So that took the pressure off. I'm like, I don't really want to have guests as much. I don't need to have guests as much. What it tells me is through data and the imperfect start that, I can keep getting better from that feedback. Yes, I love this quote. Charlene dropped in the chat box. The most effective way to do it is just do it. Yeah, do the damn thing, right? So I'm going to flip it back to you guys just for like a reflection question that you can journal on. And that is, what does this mean for you? Where in your business right now are you waiting for perfection instead of taking action? I'm just going to let you think that through. Where in your business right now are you waiting for perfection instead of taking action? And you guys that are live, feel free to drop that in the chat box if you just want to declare it for accountability, honesty, vulnerability. Those are awesome too. People are saying marketing, talking about the whole flipping thing. Lots of great, honest, and vulnerable conversations. So I appreciate you guys so much. All right. And so let's go to number 3. Step number 3 in consistency in anything, not just podcasting, is connecting to your deeper vision. I'm going to call it your fire, your inner gut, that thing at the end of our days where we're like, I want to leave a legacy, like beyond family, right? For me, that's what has to connect me on the times where I don't want to do the thing, when I don't want to record, when I don't want to show up, when I don't want to talk in my stories, when I don't want to coach, when I don't want to talk about my offers, when I want to throw a big temper tantrum and like throw in the towel, which there's definitely many moments like that, is I have to go back to like the why I even showed up to do this thing to begin with. And I can tell you from experience, if your sole marker is monetary, that's going to be short lived because there's definitely been moments of that for me, just being transparent. For me, I'm like, but what is the reason that I was put on this earth to guide people? What is that opportunity I have? For me personally, my belief is like to inspire women into action, to move into their purpose. Sure, the container is coaching, but I think my gift is my ability to teach and to take large concepts and break them into more, measurable, short pieces. That chunking word. I love that. Chunking it down. So for me, it's like, what's my legacy? What do I want to be remembered for? Building relationships, supporting people. And I think that if we sometimes get stuck down here in the details and in the weeds, we lose sight of that. For what purpose? Why am I showing up to record the podcast? Why am I showing up trying to get clients? Why am I showing up trying to post on social media? And so in that moment, when you're like stopping yourself because perfection has hit in, like that's where you can tap into that fire. But like, why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I don't want other women in debt. I'm doing it because I don't want other women to, feel uncomfortable in their body. I'm doing it because I know I am meant for so much more than what I'm doing right now. And I think often one of at least for me, I'll speak for myself, is in the beginning, one of my struggles was like I wanted my business to be accessible. Like I struggled with charging a lot and that has grown over time. But for me, this is what the podcast is all about, is the accessibility of being able to give the gift of service to people for free. Some people will come on and be clients, some people won't. I'd love all of my listeners to become clients so I can get to know you more, but you have to be committed to it. Like, honestly, creating a podcast every week, two episodes a week, is costly. It's a big line item in the budget, right? To pay somebody for all the tools, everything. But for me, that connects to my mission, which is to help coaches out there make greater impact. And so I'm going to reflect that back to you. Like, what is your fire? Why did you show up to do this work? What is your deeper vision, your why? Although I don't like the word why. And so when you're lost in the moments around this is such a great place to just like tap back into energetically in your brain and your heart. Cause then you're like, oh yeah, like get out of the weeds. Don't be down here in the details. Get back up to the top to why you showed up to do this work to begin with. So just as review to go back over, consistency is the name of the game, right? When other people are quitting and falling off and you're still showing up and putting in the work, I guarantee you are going to rise to the surface. And that really for me happened in 3 ways: by setting a standard, by starting somewhere, and connecting to a deeper vision. And now today I get to be with all of you, celebrating consistency through the podcast, but really celebrating like lots of other things that I know all of you have really done as well. And so I'm so grateful. End of the formal podcasting part. So I hope there's a message in there that really speaks to you. And those of you listening, if this speaks to you, take a second and just share this episode with a friend or somebody else that might need a little swift kick in the pants, a little reminding of what, how the simple ways that we can really bridge the gap from being inconsistent to consistency. And so we're going to have a little fun now since it's the 300th episode. We are going to go to open Q&A. And so I primed everyone here and I said, I want you to come up with some questions. I don't know any of the questions. We'll see who's going to go first. I said, just don't leave me hanging. I already see some hands, so I appreciate you guys. And we'll maybe see how much time we have for like maybe 8 to 10 minutes of questions. We'll see where it takes us and we'll go from there. So I have no idea what you're going to say, but I'm ready for it. All right, Tina, want to go first?
So one of your standards was to do outcome blocking. And the one of the struggles that I have with that is that if I pick something and I don't achieve it, like if it's like I make my standards too high for myself, how do you not go down the rabbit hole of beating yourself up? And then how do you also start to make reasonable outcome blocking expectations? So,
Yeah. I think this is a common struggle first off. So type a one in the chat box if you can relate. Um, First off, I'm going to answer the first question, the latter part first, because I think this is important. I think with anything, like think of, the first time, if you're a parent, you ever changed a diaper. It took me a lot longer on the first go rounds than by the time I got really good at it by my second kid and I could change a diaper really quick. But it took me lots of repetitions to figure out a reasonable time frame and way that I could do that. And so I think it is going to take you repetitions on specific tasks because you're going to get better at it. You're going to get more efficient. You're going to like eliminate the doubt that creeps in, and wants to stop you. So if we go to like, let's just make something up. Your task, your outcome that you wanted is to put together 5 social media posts, right? And what you do, you sit down, you're like, well, it's been an hour now and I only have 2 done or I have 1 done. So I think in the beginning, something to do is create the outcome, but use a time frame instead of the outcome as your guide. So you're like, okay, this is a new task for me. So what I'm actually going to do for the first time is I'm just going to set an hour. The outcome I'd like is 5 social media posts and or 60-minute expiration first. So then you can reasonably go, all right, it took me 60 minutes. I crafted 1 or 2 posts. So now when you set that outcome block again for the next time, you can slightly elevate that goal. You're like, okay, I did 2. So my next outcome time, I'm going to like set a goal for 3 because now you've streamlined those systems. So for me, I'm evaluating, but there's definitely times I don't get it done in that time frame, or maybe I was recording podcasts and I got interrupted multiple times, or it just felt choppy or something. Then I've learned how much time, so I give myself like a buffer. Like I give myself basically 45 minutes an episode to record, but that took failing lots to figure out that sweet spot. So is that helpful? Yeah, and I think it's just like not making it mean you're not good at the task. It's just going to take some time in the beginning and lots of reps until you can definitely master that for sure. So great question. So celebrating her, give her some love for that question. Good one. Liz, next up.
So my question is, how do you manage the fear factor when putting yourself out there in your business and your socials, and how do you keep up the momentum?
Yeah, so when you say fear, like what fear for you are you speaking to, if you don't mind my asking?
I think it's 2 things, fear of failure and fear of judgment.
Yeah. I mean, I think those 2 go hand in hand, honestly. Um, So I'm going back because I think there's a couple things that come to mind because I'm thinking like what it is now is not what it was. But I like to use that context of I remember like the first year I've shared this with my BDC members and usually is I post pictures of food for the first year on my Instagram when I was doing health and nutrition coaching because I was so afraid to put like my face on social media. But it goes back to like do what you can and start where you can start as far as that piece goes. But I think the management of fear is to come to the place where you understand that it never goes away. Oh yeah, Kim's saying the same thing in the chat box. the fear doesn't go away. Like there's still this element of judgment that comes up because you start to do bigger and bolder things that exist out there. But the reframe for me personally is like those people's judgments, like they don't influence how like they don't supersede the care I have to like support people. So it's like I have to make my vision and my drive for what I do bigger than the judgment. And so you can like visually, here's a tip, is I've because there's some definite people, friends of mine, not on this call by the way, but friends of mine that for whatever reason, and type a one in the chat box if this has ever happened for you, but like when I would go to post on social media, it was like a particular friend's like judgment was the one I tended to think about the most. I'm like, what is she gonna say? Because there had been like conflict or something, or she'd made passes or judgment around me. And I don't know what it was. It was like that particular friend. So I'd actually have to visually shift in my brain, like her jumping up and down and cheering for me and giving me high fives. So when we change that internal representation, that's super helpful because then we think about like that person becomes our cheerleader. And if it's just like vague people and there's nobody associated with that specifically, Liz, again, you can push those people far away. And I've talked about a little bit about like my webinar. Sometimes when I'm worried that there's going to be crickets in the webinar and I get into this fear that like I have this thought like, nobody cares what I have to say. I have to rechange that visual to like people behind my screen, like jumping up and down and saying like, Amanda, this is the best stuff I've ever heard. Right. And so in the middle of webinar, I will literally start to chuckle with myself because that's where my brain has to shift. So whatever you need to do internally um, to bring that up. But and then lastly, I guess I would say is like, Liz, they're going to judge us if we take action or not. Right? They're going to judge us if we don't do anything. And they're going to say, oh, that girl, she keeps talking about her business and isn't doing anything about it. Or they're going to judge us because they're like, that girl, look at how she's putting herself out there. And I would definitely rather be making impact and making profit and have that judgment like, any day of the week. So that would be my 2 cents. Helpful? Any of that feel realistic? Okay, good. Awesome. All right, Dominique.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
I'm fairly new to your world. I only discovered you a few weeks ago, and I love your messaging. I love your messaging.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And that's what my question is. How do you adapt your messaging, for lack of a better word, to be able to reach your ideal client when she's at a really dark place, knowing that the work that you do is completely life-changing? So I coach women and help them navigate divorce without regret. And
Mhm.
so when I'm reaching, I mean, I my clients are at every stage of separation and divorce, but when I'm trying to with my messaging reach someone who's in a really dark place and who thinks it's actually the end of the world, and professionally and personally, I know what that's like. And I also know how powerful the work is, and that it really, I mean, I'm excited. I'm sad and I'm excited.
Totally.
You can't lead with, this is awesome, you know?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're getting a divorce. Like put
Right?
a Y in the chat box if you ever have felt this way as a coach. Like, I'm so sad, but yes, this is my opportunity to change your life. Like I definitely relate to that.
Exactly.
This is a great question. So we can even Tina C who's here. We spend a great deal of time finding ways in our business to collect market research. And so what I would say is market research is queen, and it doesn't have to be in a formal way. Market research can come from your intake form. So if a woman reaches out to you, one of the reasons that we keep an intake form, and I always go back and reference, like when I'm building landing pages and sales pages, I go back to the intake forms. Or when we have, new students join the BDC, we have them complete an intake form. And one of the main questions that I ask is like, what's your current struggle in business right now? Because even though it's not divorce, I would argue that our students coming into programs are also at some element of a low in their world and in their business, and they're ready for help. And so then when they answer that question, that allows me to capture in real time where they're at in that moment. We call it the bottom fallout, point C, where they're at in that moment of time. So they might say things like really dark things. They might say, like, I feel like I have no place to turn. Like, I feel like, how could I have imagined this person that loved me so much, like, would turn on me? I feel alone. I feel like all of these things, because I actually want to take that and then use that on my sales pages 100%. And it's not about manipulating, it's about honoring. I think it's about using the right messaging. So where we read like that sales page and we're like, oh my gosh, she gets me. Like, Dominique is my person. And the only way we can do that is by asking our people. And I don't know your story, but maybe you were that girl, right? And that's what's inspired you into action. For me, when I helping coaches, I was that girl at points, and I didn't know what to do. And so anytime you have that opportunity to do market research, and if you're brand new to coaching and you don't have clients yet, then I would just reach out potentially to maybe 5, 10 divorced women. I have my clients do this all the time. I just had Miss Sherry and her team do this. And I said, I want you to reach out to your ideal clients, and I want you to ask them, like, when they were at their rock bottom, like, what were some of their struggles? Or maybe they're just in it. Like, how are you feeling right now? What's your greatest problem? And then literally, you don't want to change their words. You just want to use their exact words to meet them where they're at. Does that make sense? Is that
Yeah, it really
helpful?
does. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then I think another way is just a healthy way to look at other people doing the work you're doing and kind of compare messaging. Like, are we talking the same things? What makes you different about your messaging? What are you willing to say that maybe other people aren't? And that can drive and the same way, I want to say one more thing to this is equally to their greatest problem is also that dream vacation. Like, where do they want to be? Ask them that question too. Because when we think about the landing page, what you're going to do is be the solution that's going to take them to like finding that true soulmate connection, or being in a relationship again that, like, where they're not bringing in their old baggage or feel like they're going to, like, the bottom's going to fall out. Like, whatever they're saying, you want to know that too about where they want to go. Cool? Helpful? Awesome. Love it. Inballs next. Next question.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
So I don't have a direct question. Like, I don't know how to phrase it, but I'm sure you'll figure out what my question is. So, with your group program, it's hard, or not yours, but in general, it's hard to really focus on implementation with the women in it, especially when it gets a little bit larger. Where with one-on-one, you can, follow up, make sure that they're implementing, there's more accountability. So how in a group program do you kind of make sure that people are taking action, making sure that they're going to come back to the calls? What is your way to kind of get your mindset around that?
Yeah. So high level first are non-strategic things, I think. One is just really paying attention to the needs of your client and building and delivering content that is valuable to them so they want to keep coming. So high quality content that meets the majority where they're at. And so that's going to come from asking questions. What do you need? Like, what's keeping you stuck, right? And I also think there's just this element of human connection. Like, I feel that I could, with 100% accuracy, tell you where every single one of my students are in my group program, even if they're not coming to calls. And the reason is, if I don't see their face consistently, I'm reaching out to them behind the scenes. I'm sending emails. I'm sending a DM. If I haven't seen their face, I'm like, hey, where have you been? What's going on? So I think that's how, like, I think at the end, coaching is all about feeling seen and heard. And we're not going to get 100% of client. Like, I would like to think we can prevent everybody from slipping through the cracks. There's some people that no matter what we do, they have the personality that they love to be in every program, and they just take away their nugget and they're good to go. So I've also had to detach myself from thinking that everybody's going to move through a group program like I would. Like, I am the person that if I invest in something, I don't miss a call. I do every step, but not all of our clients need that, nor do they want that. They might come to you just to see the structure of what you've built. They might come to see one thing and then they walk away and they're like, I made my investment back already. So I think that's like the inner work that we have to do first off, and then the little things that we can do. Strategically, I do think there's some things that you can do to increase accountability. And this is also something we're like literally in real time, even working on to continue to grow as our a group program is happening. I think you can offer an upsell to one-to-one support. So you could always at a higher ticket, like say, hey, be in my group. But if there's ways, you can offer like, sidelined group one-to-one support. So there is an option that if they want that additional support that exists. Something that we do consistently in the FBL, and then I do less frequently in the BDC because it's a different dynamic, is I invite them to success calls. So after being in my program for a few weeks in the FBL, there's an automation that goes out and says, hey, hop on the phone with me. I love to see how things are going. So then I can get feedback in real time. How are you doing? What's really working? What's not? And then this also gives me an opportunity to see, like, are they a great fit to make a move into the next level, of coaching for us? And then I had one other thing. Oh, and lastly, which is brand new, something we're just doing, not going to spill all the details, is bringing somebody onto your team to be that person that guarantees client success. So hiring like a client success manager who in real time, their sole focus is to make sure that no client is slipping through the cracks. They're creating systems and structure to like guarantee, once you get to that big enough place, they're managing your inbox. They're doing all those client facing things that you don't necessarily have all the time for, but you also care enough about to like obviously maintain and pay somebody to do. Is that helpful? Hopefully you take away a nugget there for sure. More questions. We got like maybe 3 minutes left. Any other questions that you all have, personal and different, others?
I'll ask you a question.
Oh, okay.
How do
Amazing.
you manage your personal and professional life as one?
That is a wonderful question. I didn't put her up to that, by the way. Justin and I talk about this all the time. My mom's here, so hopefully she agrees. I think I do this pretty well. But I'm also a driver. Like I love my business. Like I love it all the time. And it's hard to set boundaries. And there's sometimes where I definitely transparently send a message to Tina at 9:00 at night. I'm like, this was on my brain. Like I have to like share it. I think it's waking up at a consistent time every day and setting intention in the morning is by far a greatest game changer for me, of just waking up, having a morning routine, getting in a workout. Like that energizes me so that I feel like I can pour into everything else. I forget who told me this at one point, but it stuck with me, is like the time you have is the time you will take. So if a professor signs and gives you a paper to write and gives you 3 weeks, you'll take 3 weeks. If a professor gives you 24 hours, you'll find the time to get it done. And so I take that and carry that into my business as far as boundaries, are concerned. So obviously I homeschool Miller right now, so that's looked a little different and it will look different next year. But I only work within the kids' work. So when they're at school, that's when I work. And then I, for the most part, do cut it off unless there's something exceptional happening that bleeds into the evening time. And I try to lead with that. Like as a company, we have zero expectation to work on Friday. Recently, we made that shift too, because I like that flexibility of a 3-day week. But when it comes to the day in and day out, I think it's a mindset more of like the time I'm going to give myself is what I'm going to have. And I proactively plan my week so that grounding process that I do every Sunday is like a non-negotiable for me. I map out, going back to Tina's question, my outcomes that I'm going to achieve. And if I get all of them done, great. If I don't, then those remaining ones like carry over. But at the end of the day, my family's first. Like, and that's hard for me, to be honest. Like, I really think about business a lot, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to, when I'm 70, nobody's gonna be like, wow, you built a really cool business, right? Maybe they will, but I think they're more like going to be like, oh, your kids are amazing and your grandkids and they're great humans. So that's always my default. I don't know if I really answered your question, but that's kind of my mindset.
You did a great job. And I agree. I think you do a really good job of this. I want to model my life like that too.
Thank you. I
Love you.
appreciate you so much. I love you back. Any other questions? Last one before we go. Gina.
I want to know what the least favorite part of entrepreneurship is for you.
Gina might be able to answer this better. Well, I'm not very organized. I'm kind of organized. Not as organized as I thought I was until Tina.
Organization is not your favorite thing to do, but listen, guys, her inbox has 0 emails right now. I saw it, so she did
Well,
it.
that was Monday. There's emails in there now, but I did get my
Okay,
inbox to 0.
but
I took a picture and sent it to her. I was like, my inbox is 0. I honestly, I thought I was organized. I think I am organized, but to run a business at a high level, you need like supreme organization and systems, and that's where Tina comes in. And I'm like such a full believer of bring the people in that complement your weaknesses. And so it's first like letting go of your ego enough to say, okay, I need help in this area. I need help doing these things. But I honestly think my least favorite part right now, aside from organization, is like keeping up on social media creation. And part of it is because it's not really where we're getting a lot of our traction. So like the ROI is lesser for me. Um, but part of it is I don't love the algorithms like all of you. So I'm fighting the same battles. We're no different, but also I'm like, all right, maybe it's time that I hire somebody in that spot too. So that's a position, we're looking to fill. So just being honest, it's not my favorite thing. I'm not like a content, like some people are really great at it, but it's not my favorite thing for sure. Good question. I do have a private question. I do have a fun question. Favorite skincare product? I am obsessed with the Zoe products right now. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's like you can only buy it at the dermatologist, like facial cleansing products. But my favorite new all over, I don't know about you guys. I don't like heavy makeup. I never have. I remember when I was a dancer, my mom used to have to do my makeup when I was little. I'd be like, take it off. Or at my wedding, I wore fake eyelashes and I was like ripping them off by like the end. I don't like that stuff. I like really light makeup, but Hourglass. If you have not tried Hourglass yet, Hourglass is like a tinted SPF. I have it on right now. It's super lightweight. It's like my favorite all over coverage, and it's really super light. So, I love these girly questions too. You guys are amazing. I'm so grateful for you to be here. If you're live, like in person with me on Zoom, hang tight. We're going to do a couple more things. We have some fun things to give away. Those of you listening online, on YouTube, live on the podcast, I just want to shout out to you because even though you're not here in real life with us or in Zoom life with us, you are a reason that we record every week. And I'm so grateful that you're here. If there's any, podcast episodes, titles, things that you want to hear more of, then we are an open book. Feel free to send us an email, drop me a message on social media, of course. And cheers to a whole lot more episodes with you.